Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Salt Water for the Soul. I'm Mandee Elam. I'm part of Sea Goddess Healing Arts, and I'm so honored to be here with my friend, Holly Joy McCabe, also known as the Spiritual Fit Chick. And I'm so honored to hold some space with you. How are you today, sister?
I am good. I'm just really excited to see what unfolds and where this conversation goes because it's always a pleasure.
You never know what spaces Holly and I are going to get into. We tend to get together and then it just snowballs. So we don't even know what the treat you're in for today. So sit back and enjoy it.
It's unfold in real time for you guys, with us too.
With us, with spirit, we're both tapped in. That's part of what connects us is our spiritual side. And also, Holly's going to tell you a little bit about her magic, but she's absolutely incredible at everything she does. But she's an incredible fitness trainer, and you've taught me some exercises that have just become part of my daily routines and my little walkouts and stuff. And I think of you every day. And Holly's always planting seeds and helping people to alchemize and heal themselves. And I carry you with me. So I thank you for that because I'm always adding in all these little moves that you taught me.
Oh, I love it. That's the coolest. It's always the greatest compliment I can ever get is that a moment or a tip or something stays with people, because that's kind of ultimately what I'm always striving for is real world stuff that we can use, actually use and apply to our lives. So thank you for that.
Right? If we want to create change, if we want to, you and I, we're both into this whole spiritual world and manifesting things. But I think we both know that it takes real life action steps. It takes grounding in, it takes practice and repetition and devotion and showing up for yourself. And that's something that you're really good at embodying and showing and portraying for all of us and leading by example, because you're always doing things that we can always jump into.
Thank you. That's what it's all about. Like you said, you've got to actually take the action steps. And I think sometimes we get so deep into the knowing or the hearing or the retreats or the books or the services, all these different things. And we forget to actually just apply the littlest things. And I've went through that a lot in my life too. I'm in 17 different classes and courses and healers and everything. And I'm I forgot to drink water today. That probably should change. So I try to always put myself back into that simple, consistent habit space too.
Yeah, I've come to realize it's my biggest medicine and it's what serves me the most. It's what keeps me anchored and it's what helps me to bring in more and new and to actually absorb all those new classes I want to learn. Because that's the thing, when you're on this path, it never stops. It just grows and glows more and more. And when you're really in alignment, there's just never an opportunity to be bored because there's such a to-do list of all the shit you want to learn and see and feel while you're here.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Holly, will you share a little bit just about you and your business and what it is, your current magic you're offering the world? You've got a lot of amazing products and services that really help people.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the health and fitness space for over 17 years, which is crazy because that makes me feel like I'm a dinosaur or something.
It's so weird to think about, right?
I know, because every year when I have to add a year, I'm how is that even possible? I guess we age without our knowing. And then all of a sudden we're oh, I've been in this industry for 17 years and that makes me feel old. But I actually I love actually being able to say that every year that this is what I've dedicated my life to. And every year I get better and I learn more and I go through my own personal growth, which is like we were just saying, you can take all the courses and study, and I'm the biggest science nerd ever. I love learning new techniques and tools and all of that, but our own experiences expand as well, and sometimes I look back and even just a year ago in my practice and I'm dang, I see that totally different now. So I guess backing up to your question, because I got sidetracked, what I do in this space is really try to combine mind, body, energy medicine with real world practical health tools, so I was in the fitness industry for a very long time and then expanded to nutrition and trying to find my own balanced place with eating because I had struggled with an eating disorder and very toxic ideas around food and dieting and exercise in the beginning of my fitness career. So I kind of found a balanced place with that. And then when I enrolled in massage school, I really got introduced to this whole bigger concept of like mind body medicine, the way trauma gets stored in our body. Like I got to study incredible things like Eastern AMP and Chinese medicine and Reiki and energy healing. And I have been so physical body and like nutrition of what you put in your body for so many years. And then it was just like, poof, it was like the spectrum completed for me of mind, body, soul, like it all coming together. So, that was when I did massage school, it was over 10 years ago. And again, every year I have just continued to learn more tools about how our brains and minds and thoughts affect our bodies and how that impacts the way we eat, the way we exercise, the way we feel, chronic illness, all of those things. So I really just in my personal practice am about healing the body from a mental, emotional, spiritual space, but also going to the root, like the nervous system. Like so much of us, so much of our issues internally, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, is rooted in like nervous system dysregulation because we're constantly stressed. We've all been through so much trauma, women especially, sexual assault, like abuse, like just so many different things. And all of that stuff gets stored in our body and it kind of just breaks us down over time. So my philosophy and my approach is really about always starting at that deepest root and then kind of healing layer by layer, mental, emotional, spiritual, and then trying to put in things like nutritional changes or an exercise program, because then the foundation is legit. So that's kind of my work as a whole in a nutshell in the coaching space and the healing space. And then my other companies are kind of built as little props because we can get so overwhelmed, if we're in a state of health crisis where it's like, I need to change my diet and there's 500 different ideal diets out there. I need to do this. What do I need to take? What healer do I need to see? And we're kind of always going out there. And I think a lot of times people get overwhelmed. It becomes way too daunting. They're like, I don't have enough time, energy, or money to do all the things I need to do to heal. And one thing that I've always been super passionate about is the power of like micronutrients, like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. Like sometimes when we feel like we're drowning physically, our body is so depleted. Again, it's kind of bombarded with toxins, it's trauma. We're just like beat up. And then our food quality is so poor that we're very deficient in nutrients. And so sometimes something as simple as just like starting a good vitamin, mineral, or CBD routine can pick your head above water where you feel like, okay, you can start to maybe walk every day, or you can think about working with that life coach and addressing your lifelong trauma and all of those things. So my other company, Zen in a Bottle, was really based around designing products that help people with that. Whether you're in a good state of health, it's just going to be like optimize it. But for, again, a lot of people, we're just so deficient of like basic vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that we feel like crap all the time. And it's very hard to change when you're in that state. So it's really cool because in a plant medicine journey once, I've always used the term like our soil is depleted. That's why our food quality is so low. I've always used that terminology to explain it. And in a plant medicine journey for my own healing at one point, everything that came through to me was focus on the soil, focus on the soil, focus on the soil. And I thought that was so cool. I was like, that's already the terminology I use. And I was kind of being called to look even deeper into my soil. Like even with the nutrients, our soil is based on our thoughts, our environments, everything. But it really comes down to just nourishing your body on a very deep cellular level. And all the products we created through Zen in a Bottle are like designed to do that. So it's a great complement to the coaching work and a great easy tool when people are in a kind of low state of like, okay, if I can do one thing, maybe I can start taking CBD daily and I'll feel better. And then I can start working on the rest. So that's kind of the broad picture of everything I do and how it kind of all works synergistically together.
And it does. And it's magic. And like, it's authentic because you created it and birthed it out of your own healing journey. You're like, this is what I know works for me. Is it going to work for you? Maybe, maybe not. But hey, here it is. It's in a beautiful package. I'm going to offer it to you. And like, your products are bomb and your services are amazing. And it's all a product of you, and you're an extension of your heart. And thank you for doing all this research and studying this, because it's true. And it helps, it helps all of us to do our own work. I'm an intuitive ascension guide. side. So I'm the person a lot of people come to when they're ready to start working on all that deeper stuff and go deeper, but you can't do it. You can't give even to your own well from an empty well, and you need to support yourself. And it's so amazing how much our bodies love us and how incredibly resilient they are if we just start to give them what they need, or the time out that they need, or the dose of nutrients that they need. And it's so nice that you walk people back into that and help them to rock back into themselves and stir up their soil and add some nutrients to it in all the ways.
Yeah. And the nutrient part is, like our mental health is so directly tied to that, but everything in our cellular biology is meant to have, certain nutrients in every single cell and function in our bodies. And we're so depleted. And like for me and my plant medicine journey that I went on, I'm sure you can relate to this, as can many healers. We tend to get so in the giving, serving. It's always like, what can I give? What can I create? How can I serve? What can I do for you? And I've struggled with that a lot over the years. I owned a fitness facility in Nashville for 8 years, and my health was like consistently kind of declining because I was just literally in that facility, like 15 plus hours a day, like back-to-back clients, 30 minutes, back to back. And like, I knew at that point that I needed to find a way that I could rest and serve more people. That was the birth of Spiritual Fit Chick. But the problem is I actually, when I closed the gym, what I had built for over 8 years, I was starting from scratch. So I just went into like overdrive of like, now I got to create all these new things and I got to serve. And the whole world was like my potential client instead of just the area that my gym was. And so I really kind of dug myself, into a feedback loop of just excessive stress and expectation and chronic just overgiving. Like I just was on a mission to launch all these new companies and to save the world and save the planet and all the things. And I kind of was like, thought I was going to rocket launch, and I was like, ew, and like crashed and burned. And that was kind of the beginning of, my really deeper healing work, is trying to find a way to show up and serve and do all the things, but also take care of myself. And that's been a continuous journey. And in that plant medicine, space, it was like, focus on the soil. And the other thing that kept coming through for me was, you've slayed too many dragons. Like you've slayed all the dragons. And that like, basically my internal landscape was like a graveyard of all these dragons I had slayed for so many people. And that was really pivotal too, because I was like, dang, dude, that is what I feel like I'm doing. A lot of people say that I have this like warrior spirit, and I identify with that. Like, I feel like that is me. And so when it came through, like, you've slayed all the dragons, like now you just need to like rest your soil. I'm like, but what do I do if I'm not slaying dragons? Like, that's just the energy that I show up with. Like, that's what feels right for me. But like our body,
your comfort zone.
Yeah. It's like, but our bodies can only take so much. I was an athlete, I was a warrior, I was a trainer, I was an entrepreneur, all of these things, but I wasn't taking care of myself to keep up with that. And I work with a lot of people, entrepreneurs, healers, different people that show up with that same dynamic of like, I gotta go, like I'm making up for lost time. Like the whole feminine rising movement, even like we're kind of, I think we've got a lot more expectation on us than we even really stop and acknowledge. Cause it's like, we're trying to prove something. Like, yeah, women can own businesses and we can do this. Like, we're just, I think, trying to make up for so much lost time and for so many past generations. And we're going to kill ourselves if we don't like stop and breathe and take a vitamin. And
right. And like you brought up, like we're fighting this feminine movement, we're fueling this feminine movement with masculine energy. And we're not creating balance. We're just pushing, we're creating more imbalance, because until each and every being, this is absolutely for the feminist movement and for females, but every single one of us have beautiful divine feminine and masculine energy that runs through us. And this matrix that we've all co-created here and that we're all super plugged into, it's got us operating on guilt, shame, criticism, fear at all times. And we're all just like so stressed out, and everyone is on complete overwhelm and overload. And with this society and matrix system we've created, the only thing that we feel is acceptable is if we push harder and work harder. And we've lost our yin energy. And do people get way too lazy? For sure, because what happens is we get so overwhelmed and then we just check the fuck out. And then we don't do anything. And then we're like, oh my God, okay, move a muscle, move a thought. I got to get this life force back going again to hold myself accountable. And that's where the truest ninja warrior training comes in, because you got to balance these energies within you by always having that patriarchal, rough, masculine energy coming in as our autopilot, as our subconscious, and as what's being constantly fed to us. So I think you're on the brink of breaking a lot down.
Yeah, no, I love what you just said, because that was kind of, as soon as you said the masculine, driven energy. So about 4.5 years ago was when I knew I wanted to close the gym. I was like, it just felt like I was like being suffocated. I started traveling more. And every time I came back to this facility, it felt more like a little box. And I was like, I want to travel. I want to expand. I want to lead retreat. Like I was just feeling like this. And so I also was very much into recognizing, like, being an athlete, owning a gym, which is the most male dominated space, like being as young as I was, like, again, I was trying to keep up with this like macho male 50-year-old energy. And I'm like, I was 23 years old when I started my gym. And so I really started to recognize my masculine tendencies. I was like, I'm just driving myself into a ground. Like my health had kind of been going down, down, down for a while. And then it, again, just sort of like crashed and burned. And so I was very much into this whole like, okay, well, maybe I should try more flow instead of hustle. There was a lot of this just coming up in the spiritual space of like the whole like flow and align. And I had known about manifestation and attraction and all of that stuff for years, because that's what started my whole entrepreneur path. But I was like, I'm going to try this like feminine flow thing. And like, once I kind of fell off the cliff and my health was kind of in shambles and I was just trying to do too much, it was almost like for so long I had been in that I tried to turn it off or dial it back, and it just shut off. And like for almost a year, I felt like I was floundering. It was like I was trying to be this feminine version of myself, and this very like, I remember at the time when I knew I wanted to like really come out of the spiritual closet and really show like all my colors in the spiritual space, that was intimidating, because I had been known as the fitness person. Like I wasn't known for all the other things. And so I went and added like every spiritual coach and teacher and healer, like literally thousands of people on Facebook. And then that's all I'm seeing, right, is all these posts. And like, I'm trying to, not consciously, but I'm like, oh, is that what I have to do? Okay, love and light and heart radiation and all of that. And I was like, it was kind of me, but I don't feel like I've ever fit into one box. Like I've always been my own version of it. So anyway, I felt like I was trying to like step into this new version of myself and figure out how to present that, like how to package that to the world. And I was trying to be so woo-woo, airy, fairy, feminine, divine, goddess, chakra, yoni, like all the things that, again, I acknowledge and I appreciate, but just the way it was packaged did not work for me. And I felt like I just floundered all over the place and got nowhere with nothing for like a whole year. And it was actually a Danielle Laporte, I think, book maybe, where she had kind of been through that. And she just like, it was one line in her book where she's like, I realized that like the masculine energy is what serves me the best in my like business and all the things. She's like, I have to catapult that. And it was almost like it gave me permission that, oh, I don't have to like completely not be this masculine driven version of myself. I just have to find a way to do this, like maybe ebb and flow with it, not turn it off or dial it down or try to just be this. And so that was just a huge learning curve, like just a really interesting concept of, oh, actually masculine energy is where I really get shit done. And if I don't, I'm so lazy and passive and like, and I don't get shit done. And so learning when to turn it on and then turn it off, I think was the hardest thing for me, is to really understand not only when to turn it on and off, but that I didn't have to be this like very archetypal, like spiritual woo-woo person. And I just had a lot of stuff like mental blocks and internal, like, I guess, objections about how I got to be. Could I be really kind of blunt and hardcore and like badass? And that's where that warrior part kind of started coming back into me. I'm like, oh no, this feels right. Yeah, I am meant to be really fierce. I don't have to be so soft all the time, but like, that's still feminine for me. Like my feminine is very fierce and stuff. So I just think everyone has their own unique journey to walk on that, like understanding when and where to use those energies. And for me, I felt like it had not served me. And then I needed to like get into this whole new paradigm of flow and where everything was just going to magically happen. And it didn't happen for me. It just didn't. I have to harness that like kind of badass energy a lot to get things done and to feel very alive. And I feel like when I am that, I can also like step back into the softer, more feminine parts of me much easier. So that was a really weird journey for me of that whole masculine feminine energy thing. It was very tough.
You know, and how potent though, and how cool that you allowed yourself to sit with it and you can look back and like, yeah, it took a whole year, but like in the grand scheme of things, you're far ahead than a lot of people in the whole consciousness realm, you know? And like, I've sat there too. And like, for me to heal myself, I had severe adrenal fatigue and fibromyalgia. I had HPV strain 16 right after getting the HPV vaccine. All of a sudden, never had it before, then got that. Had really bad severe gout attacks. I'd broken my back 3 times. I had all this arthritis going on and blown out both my ankles. And I was just like feeling like I was growing older every day and like sicker. And I didn't understand what was happening because I was trying to be such a good person on the outside and I was pushing, going. And, you know, it took me getting just completely knocked out on my ass. And that's when I started doing a lot more plant-based stuff. I think you and I both started in like 2017 or like around July 2017. I think there was like a big shift that happened for a lot of us. And like, I definitely started like learning how to work with these different energies and what I needed to do to fuel my body to pull myself back out of it. One of my favorite teachers in this like lesson, especially for the feminine, because it's a balance. You need both of those energies all day. You need to know when to keep your mouth shut and take a beat. You need to know when to drink the water or do the meditation. You need to know when to speak up. You need to know when to take the step in order to move yourself forward, whether it's just going for a run or working on your own business or healing trauma, whatever it is. And they both run through us all day. And so one of my favorite lessons was, are you familiar with the 5-second rule from Mel Robbins?
Yeah.
Yes, right. It's been around for a while, and it's just something that we literally are never going to feel like it. And our bodies are faithful servants of our minds and the things that are coming through. And when you feel that impulse to do something, whether it's get off the couch and go to the gym, like she describes in her TED Talk, it's called How to Stop Screwing Yourself by Mel Robbins, if anyone wants to watch that. And she just talks about how there's just this 5-second window where if you don't pair that impulse with actual life force and energy and make a move, then you're not going to connect it and you're not going to make the change. And then 15 minutes later, you're on autopilot again.
Yeah. And to me, you know, and I think that I still have a lot left in my journey. Like, I mean, we always do, but in this whole like balance of feminine and masculine for sure. Like even in the past, like 6 months, I've kind of like dove into some deeper, like sexual healing contexts and like these feminine energies and kind of just, that's kind of been the one area that I never really felt called to. I kind of was just like, sex is fine for me. I enjoy it. Like, I felt like even though having a lot of sexual trauma, I just didn't really get it. It didn't resonate with me when I would see people kind of really embodying that as this like life force and this thing. And I'm like, sex is between me and my partner. And like, that's it. Like, I just thought it was just sex, you know? So I've been diving a lot deeper into like the I guess, bigger mechanics of sexual energy and just life force and creative powers and stuff. So like that's really kind of opening some doors for me that connect things a little bit more of like, this isn't an area that I'd necessarily explored in that feminine movement before. It's a little deeper. And I do feel like there's parts of me that I've kind of like cut that off. Again, I have kind of made it like, no, sex is me and my husband and here and in our bedroom. Like it's not a part of anything else. And so I am kind of enjoying that exploration of learning that energy and really how it flows through and how it shows up in so many different ways. I think for a really long time in the fitness industry, everything was so over-sexualized. You know, I feel like everything is so over-sexualized everywhere. So I've always tried to be like, not that, you know, in the fitness space, I always tried to be someone that wasn't like, okay, here's me and my thong and here's my ass showing. Like, I wanted to show women what you could feel like, what it was like to be strong and empowered. Not like if your ass doesn't look like this, you're not worthy, or, you know, or like, don't bother with fitness. So I'm just kind of in this whole new exploration space of learning how to really like harness that and embody that, but not in a way that's exploitive or that sends a message of, I don't know, like any confusing messages. Cause I've also followed some people that really embodied that. And I felt like it was so like micro focused on that it took away other things from women. You know, I'm like, okay, cool. Like you're embodying your sexual energy, but like, what about your entrepreneurial side or your badass side or your warrior side? You know, all these other elements of you. So I think that I'm just recognizing some places that I've kind of been like, nope. And I'm welcoming in different ideas and what that looks like for me. And then just understanding how that shows up in my business and stuff too, like how I can tap into a little bit more of that juicy feminine energy for creation and motivation. But, you know, again, also sometimes in business, especially, you do need that very jagged edge, like hardcore stuff, because the other thing that I see in the healing space for so many coaches and leaders is kind of like, they don't have boundaries. They, you know, someone can cancel on them last minute and they're like, okay, you don't have to pay me. And like in my business, I've got like really, really strict policies and procedures and like cancellation policies and everything. And that served me really well. And sometimes when I meet with people, they're just like shocked. They're like, what? Like, I need to give you 48 hours notice. And I'm like, yeah, because I really value my time and I want you to value it too. And so like that masculine energy, I think is missing in the healing space a lot. Is there's just a lot of passivity and, oh, it's fine, it's cool, and just whatever. And people are like not serving as many people as they could, and they're depleting themselves again. So
I did that. Guilty. Lesson learned.
It's tough. I think we all do. Like, I think my journey in business ownership and having a brick and mortar and stuff, when I first started training and it was just me, I was like, I literally remember the first session I had with someone, like a first consult, and they're like, how much are you? And I was like, whatever you could pay me. Like, I didn't even have prices. And like, when she asked me that, my whole body was like, don't know, maybe $1.
It's such an initiation that we all have to go through. It really is.
Yeah.
It's part of that, you know? And like, I love that you're bringing up the sexual energy too, because it's so important and it's so needed right now for us to find our balance as a collective, as an earth, as we ascend into this whole new 5D paradigm. And there's a reason why we get so triggered around sexuality. And it's because so many of us have had really horrible experiences with it. Then we were also taught, like, the word masturbation literally means to self-harm in Latin. And so we were all conditioned with this like negative energy around self-pleasure, which connects us to our kundalini and our higher selves and like all this stuff. And it's this big world that's really scary to dive into. And I believe very much, especially for people like you and me, and healers and all kinds of people, divine feminines out there, that it comes in when we've created the peace and the harmony and the sacred safe space in our worlds and ourselves, then it's safe enough to start exploring it. And it comes in this really natural, cool way. And I'm so excited that you shared that with us. And you were like, no, I was all like, not my thing. And now all of a sudden, this is something that I'm becoming curious and I'm opening up to, and I'm understanding how it can work with me. But like, if you were to try to invite all that in 10 years ago, even I tried to invite all that in 10 years ago in my own psyche, it never would have worked. And I understand why now it's like such a divine time for it to come in and to look at it for you. And then for me, when it came in for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the biggest aversions, like, I mean, I had some hardcore conditioning growing up, like super strict religious family, like, you know, I had all of that. And so like, I always had pretty firm sexual boundaries anyway. You know, I kind of had my timeline and my, I'm going to be in relationships or whatever, that felt, you know, authentic to me. Like, even when I left home at 16 and wasn't in that religion or anything, like, I developed those out of my own, okay, this is what feels right. But one thing that I felt like really pushed me away, well, for one, the fitness industry, and again, just how hypersexualized everything was. And I just was like, but fitness is about feeling good and being healthy and strong, you know, all of that. But then the other thing is, even with like my spiritual journey and stuff, I started to notice, you know, there's always these extremes with everything. And like we mentioned earlier, like, women are trying to kind of make up for lost time with the entrepreneurial space and all these different things that we haven't really got to be in. I feel like that very much exists in the like sexual liberation space, where there's a lot of people who have felt so sexually like oppressed or abused or controlled that they kind of latch onto this extreme idea of I'm going to have sex with whoever, whenever, however, and it's like overflowing sexuality that is a pseudo sense of like empowerment for them. And I've worked with people on this. I've seen this. I've just noticed this. I've kind of intuitively felt this where
I did that in college for sure.
Yeah.
College and a little after, especially struggling after eating disorders and like putting on weight and things and being like a plus size girl. I was like, well, I can still get anybody I want. And like, it became this like empowerment thing where like, well, I can still do it. Like I can still, you know, like it's still whatever, but it was a lack of self-love. It was the lack of boundaries. It was all this other stuff I wasn't realizing or noticing because I was only focusing on what I could show or prove, because we all have to prove so much to ourselves. So I did that for a while. And then, you know, then didn't for a really long time. And, you know, now I feel a lot more healed and healthy and balanced, but I honor myself. I have zero regrets too. I'm like, well, that was my chapter back then. It initiated me through a lot of things. So I'm glad you brought that up. And if anybody out there is listening, I was there too.
Yeah, I think maybe my like kind of religious context is what maybe blocked that a little bit. I mean, I certainly had more promiscuous times with just dating and, you know, all of that. I think we all have our own version of that journey too. And I think that there's just this pendulum swing of like, everything always comes with an opposite, like boom, over here, over here, over here. And I think that there are a lot of women that tried to embody that to feel empowered and to feel like they were like breaking the shackles of the patriarchy and all these different things. But deep down inside, it wasn't honoring their truest self. It's not really what their heart and soul wanted. You know, I've even had friends over the years that they got into this like man hater mode. So they were like all about going and hooking up, but they kind of sold out to themselves because deep down inside, they did want a relationship. They wanted a husband, a family, you know, but we're told that those things are bad. Like, screw that. No, I'm just going to go hook up and be a man. And it's very much that masculine energy too, of like, I'm just going to have casual sex. When for a lot of us, again, we might have times and places that does serve us and it has its pleasure and power and all of that. But for a lot of women that I know and have seen and just picked up on, I think it's a sellout almost to themselves, is they think that they have to, okay, well, I can't beat the man, so I'm going to become a man, you know, in business, in work, in sexuality. I'm just not going to have any feelings attached to this, and that will make me feel empowered. And so I hope to see in that space a lot of people coming back to their true power and kind of understanding the deeper sacred. For me, the power in sexuality was always just like the sacred, you know, again, and it's hard to even really talk about it. I don't even know that I ever really have tried to verbalize this. So I'm not the greatest with words right now, but
lay it on the altar and it's all perfect.
Yeah. It's like, I had this idea that sex was sacred in a context. But now I'm just understanding a bigger, like, I guess, dynamic of that, a bigger overarching theme of how that it can be sacred and separate, but it can also be in your life, in your everyday movement, I guess is how I would describe it. So for me, that's kind of my journey. And I just hope that when women are exploring that we continue to be more true to ourselves, you know, like we are, no matter what we're reading or picking up. Like even me, like when I first started reading these books, I was kind of like, this is interesting. But to me, I was like, I don't have to embody this exactly in this way. I get to take this, and I always use the saying, chew up the fruit and spit out the seeds. I get to bring in all of this and then see what feels right to me and feel like what truly feels good. And maybe there's parts of me that are blocked or wounded or whatever that, you know, again, 10 years from now, I'll be like, well, I thought that was best for me, but I was just blocked, or I needed to heal something. And I guess that's what I'm saying from an outside perspective with the kind of liberation thing, is I feel like there's a lot of people that will eventually look back and be like, that's not really what I wanted to do. It was just what I felt like was going to make me feel more empowered. Because at the end of the day, we're all just looking to have a sense of power and control over our lives. And we see that out in a lot of ways, with making money, with hooking up with people, with spending money. You know, we always want to feel like we're in control of us. And I think that, you know, we all do that in different ways and times. So I think that's where my kind of aversion is intuitively deep down inside. I just felt like, well, that's not for me. And I felt that that was why that wasn't for me, is that I'm like, that's not really where I'm going to get the power. Now I have done it with money and shopping for sure. Like those were my outlets. I was like, look how much money I can make. I own 4 businesses, you know, like I've certainly taken it there. So that's my version of it, where I was like, wow, I'm really propping my worth up with my income or my reputation. And in fact, when I closed that gym, I had a real hard, rude awakening, because I realized how much of my identity I had attached to that. Not only the income, but the reputation, because we were so successful, and like people would drive from several hours like away, you know, to come and train there for one day. Like there was just this sense of like, hell yeah, I'm really good at this, and people really like what I do. Which again, you know, I'm exaggerating, but it was this sense of confidence of like, wow, I've made it. I've created this really cool thing. And it strips away, and you don't have that like physical brick and mortar to prop you up. And like, I floundered all about, like, you should have seen me at network meetings when I moved to Charlotte, and people are like, what do you do? And I'm like just choking over my word. I was like, I don't know who I am or what I do. Like I'm figuring it out all over again at 31 years old. So yeah, we just all go through those phases, and here I am at 35, you know, married, inviting in this new idea of sexuality in a very unique concept, and that we're just exploring it and seeing what that means and how that shows up, and seeing where I've blocked it and where I've had judgments or where I've had intuitive hits, because those can feel very the same too. You know, I had to dissect a lot of my judgments about certain things of like, is that my gut intuition feeling that that's not for me? Or is that just me being judgy, judgy Karen, and, you know, having my thoughts about it? And I've worked a lot on that too, because, you know, often our judgments bring up deeper wounds and deeper conditionings. And me feeling like overt sexuality was bad or dangerous has certainly been something that I've had to look at, you know, through the whole sexual journey for me. And I think that's all we can do, is just keep diving in, evaluating a little deeper, being like, interesting, and share our story, because there's somebody somewhere that's in that spot of confusion of, am I using this for power, or am I using this because this really feels right to my soul? And maybe it can help them, you know, dissect their own journey a little bit too.
Exactly. And be true and authentic to it. And whatever, you know, happened in the past, or the beliefs there, they were there to protect you or keep you safe at that time. Same for me. Yeah. And like, I was definitely that girl who was like, you know, feeling empowered and using that masculine energy. I'm plus size still, and I can still hook up with whoever I want and get any guy and blah, blah, blah. But I was definitely looking for love at the end of the night. No doubt about it. Like I definitely wanted that connection, was hoping it would, you know, grow out of maybe a hookup or something that I think so many women, especially, I talk to them about it all day with my clients all the time, are looking for. And, you know, it's okay to honor that integral feminine instinct in you of wanting love. And I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. I mean, that really sums it up. Like I said, I know I'm not like the best with words on this conversation, because it's like literally kind of the first time I'm really publicly having it. But that does sum it up, is it's like, I feel like we've just kind of cut off these certain parts of us that are so innately like woven into our soul and to our biology and everything, because we're trying to fuck the system so much. It's like, no, you will not tell me how to have sex and how to dress and how to wear. And we're this resistance, but it's like, at what point are we sacrificing who we truly are, what we really want? And again, I've had some close friends over the years that I've seen do that exact thing with the whole, like, they truly wanted partnership. They wanted safety. They wanted all of that, but it wasn't available at the time. So they tried to alter what they wanted, but they got burned every single time, man. The amount of times I've had a friend crying on my shoulder, devastated because the 20th hookup didn't, you know, like you said, end up in that, well, maybe we'll fall in love deep down inside. I'm like, no, that's not really ever going to happen. I think that causes a lot of pain, and it needs to kind of be talked about, because I've never heard anybody talk about that, like that exploration. It's like they're either arrived in this feminine goddess, or they're over here just hooking up with everybody, or they're like a prude. It's like all these little sexual boxes. Nobody talks about how we kind of go through the spectrum, and we dip our toe in all of them, and we figure it out as we go. But we are.
Yeah, and so many people associate the word goddess with sexuality too. Like I hear that like interchangeable all the time, or like, oh, you got that goddess energy going on. It always kind of has like a little sexual innuendo to it. So I think it's cool that we're bringing all of this up, and to just let yourselves, this is what Ascension is. It's dissecting, it's going within. That's what meditation is all about, is learning yourself and these different aspects of yourself and all these beautiful energies that run through you and serve you for certain amounts of time. Like, you know, just because you're just opening up that box now, it's okay. It doesn't mean you missed out or you did something wrong or this or that. But like Holly said, if you're someone who's tuning into this and you're in that state where you're truly seeking something that you're not getting out of your current situation or what you're currently practicing, then there's room and there's growth for that. And there's opportunities to let yourself say, you know what? I am a feminist, but I also totally want, you know, to be married and in love or have kids. And I want to do it all. And I want to honor all of these energies within me. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we've gotten, really imbalanced with it. And we have a hard time talking about it. This whole this stuff and money stuff, it's still just so hard for everybody to talk about.
Yeah, man. And I would love to talk about the money thing too, because it's so one and the same. Again, it's like, how do you embody it and want it, but not let it control you, you know? And it's very much the same with like our physical bodies too. You know, like when I was in the athletic space, I was like, it's funny because I still struggled with self-esteem because I was always comparing myself to like these fitness models and ripped or whatever. Now I look back and I'm like, I was in the best shape of my life and I was still looking at what I didn't have or how not strong I was or how I could be leaner. But like when I got really sick, you know, my adrenals crashed, my thyroid crashed, like my whole nervous system was like completely fried. That means like every organ system and function was like, and I have been very slowly creeping up. So I went from not only having the really incredible grounding elements of like fitness and movement to help my brain and body feel good, but I also had like kind of lost that physicality, that confidence of the way I looked, because I gained 40 pounds over like the first year when I got sick. I was not able to work out. My mental health like crashed. And I mean, that first year when I was really figuring stuff out, like my mental health was like fucked. And I mean, chemically, I mean, mentally, you know, there's a lot of different ways that are things that impact our mental health. And I like was depleted in all of them. I was just overwhelmed, exhausted. I didn't know who I was. I was confused. I was starting all over. I had just moved to a new city. You know, chemically, I had some sickness with viruses and taken antibiotics. So my gut was wrecked. I mean, everything. It was every single hit. And I gained 40 pounds and I was just like, I don't even recognize myself, you know, like I'm spiritual fit chick, not spiritual sick chick, you know, like I was so pissed. I was like, what is this about? Like, no, I've built this entire brand around mind, body, fitness and wellness. And now all of a sudden I can't work out and I can't show people how to deadlift. And it was just a real mind fuck for me in a lot of different ways. And, you know, over the last 4 years, I still have not been able to do the physical activity like I want. Like my body is still healing. I'm still very much at a lower, you know, threshold than I was. And so I've had to learn a whole new level of body acceptance and loving my body for what it looks like now, even though it's not my ideal version. And I think talking about that whole like dichotomy of wanting something and identifying with like the feminist movement, but still wanting a family, that also exists in the fitness space because we've got this, again, the pendulum swings to the opposite side with like body positivity, which was so needed. Oh my God, we needed to like embrace women and every flaw and everything so much. But then I think we have a lot of people that are almost like they've maybe failed with like diet culture. They've been on all the trend diets. They've done all this extreme stuff and it didn't serve them because it was fucked up. It was fed by industries and things that wanted you to fail. And so then they're just kind of like, screw it, you know, I'll just kind of give up. And so their mental and physical health isn't served by swinging to that side of the pendulum either. And so I've struggled to find my middle ground of that. I'm like, yes, I have had to love and accept my body more than ever now for everything that it does. When I wake up and I have energy to walk, that's a huge celebration for me. Yeah. But then I also have to come to terms with, but yes, I also still want to improve my body and I would like to drop a little weight and I want to change that. And like, that's okay too. And so I think we just always have this split context where it's like, there's no merging. I feel like I do this number so much in these conversations.
All the time. Me too,
like,
girl.
always the visual.
I
that
think
I'm
we're
like,
just bringing in some light language from the spirits and just helping everybody and helping ourselves ground that in, because it's true.
it is. It's just like we have to like navigate that middle road, and there are just not many people talking about it. And I feel like I always am talking about the middle ground. I've done it with veganism. I did it with the keto diet, like just this whole only over here. This is the only thing. It's the ultimate way. But then actually there's some times and places to blend and merge and step in and out of a lot of different things. And I feel like if more people were talking about that, we would have less guilt and shame around not being in one of the boxes. And then we would also be able to accept what we really want, because we wouldn't be like, I have to be in the super hyper vigilant, like obsessed with fitness camp, or in the, I don't give a shit and I'm going to do whatever camp. We would understand we can kind of be a little bit of both. And like, that's again, why I'm always doing this. Cause I feel like I'm always in that middle ground trying to like fight the waves of both sides. Cause it's never felt right for me to be entirely on one side. And that's weird, because it triggers people a lot. They're like, no, you can't be the middle ground. You're here, pick one.
You know why? That's a perfect segue to what I was just going to say, because it's like both of those are Band-Aids. Both of those are still a mask of some sort. They're still a surrendering to something you don't think is going to happen, and a covering up, and not a blending of both things. And, you know, and then the same thing, I did not start healing. I did not start losing weight, getting stronger, until I started truly learning how to love myself, because I was giving myself gout attacks all day, which emotionally are caused by impatience and need to dominate. And I'm so like gentle to everybody. And I'm like, oh, you know, you're so great. And like, yay. I'm definitely fierce and I get a lot done, but I can be hard as fuck on myself. So I was always so impatient with myself and spirit, and calling myself a fat, ugly bitch and all these things. And then boom, gout attack would pop up, and definitely had to do with a lot of the things I was eating. There's stuff, all kinds of things mixed in there. But when I took that break and I said, okay, you know what? Actually, I am kind and I'm gentle and I deserve to love myself. And you know what? Thank you, body, for breathing today. And thank you for showing up and giving me the opportunity to actually crutch on these crutches. And thanks for like, I had to change my whole way of thinking in order to bring it in and start transmuting all of that and healing all of that. And there were times I had to rip off the Band-Aid and put salt water in and be like, all right, Mandee, you can get the fuck up and you can do this. And you got this. And you're going to feel a lot better after. Yeah, I know you don't want to get on the yoga mat. I even showed up for a workout with you one time with a gout attack. Last thing I wanted to do. And I'm like, I can do this. Like sometimes you just, when you do give yourself the opportunity to let yourself rest or heal, and then also give yourself the opportunity to rip off that Band-Aid and put some salt water in, then I think you get the opportunity to do the ebbs and the flow and create the concoction, if you will.
100%. And that was a big part of, you know, I had this vision of like spiritual fit chick and like the abs and the muscles and like this athlete version, but then morphing into this spiritual version. Well, like when I look at now, like, I mean, I even like kind of almost shelved spiritual fit chick for a year. Cause like when I got sick, I got really sick. Like I was bedbound for like a little over like 9 months, like literally. And then a year after that, kind of not leaving the house. I was still finding ways to work from online and, you know, show up, but like nobody really knew what was going on behind closed doors. Like I was really, really, really sick. And when you get that sick and you lose the ability to like literally like walk around the block so much, like you start to have a bigger appreciation and honoring of your body. So like that part was huge for me. I was just like, dang, like we just take for granted the simplest things. Like I literally couldn't wash the dishes without needing to go like lie down in bed and like my body would ache. So there was a lot of really intense stuff going on and I was fighting it. Like, again, I was like, no, I had this expectation and this metric of here's what I'm going to look like. When my husband and I got married, like in the transition of all this, we decided to get married. And then he started working after being in school for 10 years and I stopped working. So the finances literally did a flip flop. I still was coaching and stuff, but I didn't have, you know, the income that I had when I owned the gym. So I had this financial pressure of I need to get to here because he and I had talked and I'm like, yeah, you know, I'll take like a month off and then I'll do this. I'm going to run this retreat and I'm going to be right here. Like literally in 3 months, I had planned to get my income where it'd taken me 8 years before. Cause I was like, I'm an experienced business owner. I know how to do this. No, that's not how it worked out at all. Like I got sicker and sicker and sicker because I kept trying further and further and further. And I did the same thing with my body. Like when I stopped being able to work out, I was like, no, 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 no. So I just kept trying to diet harder and just all the different things. And it literally was like 2.5 years of me fighting everything that I was like, what are you doing, man? Like this is your reality and this is what you're working with. So stop trying to make a apple pie out of ingredients for a pot roast. It's never going to happen. Like, here's what you have, like make something out of it, you know? And so that was one of the hardest parts is I was just fighting everything. I was like, no, 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 no. I can't gain weight because I'm a spiritual fit chick and I have to look like this for people to take me seriously. Like, you know, one of my biggest fears for me is the idea that like women get married and they let themselves go. You know, they lose all their self identity. They stop caring about themselves. Like that was one of my biggest fears with just like the idea of marriage for so long. I was 31 when I got married. And I just like, I felt this fear of like, no, 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 this is not happening. I'm not turning into one of those people that like stops working and stops caring about anything and just lives off my husband. And because there were already so many comments about that anyway, that like when I closed my gym, people thought I was just going to be a stay-at-home housewife. And I was like, got something to prove. Hell no.
Got
like
something to prove. Haters gonna hate, but gotta prove them wrong. Like that's what we all operate on the most, is what other people think or might think or say about us.
Yeah.
And in the end, does it have vicious grips in our little cells?
Dude, so much. Because I was just absolutely terrified that that's what people were going to think of me. That, you know, again, I had just decided to give up because I had built this identity around being fit, being driven, being successful, and making a certain amount of money. And then all of that got stripped away. And I was like, well, who the hell am I if I'm not all of those things? And I'll have to prop up. And it's funny because two of the biggest gifts that were birthed out of me being that sick was my company Zen in a Bottle, because I was focused 100% on retreats at the time. When I started getting sick, I did my first one and then I knew like I barely made it. And I was like, I'm going to have to shelf this. So when I was bedbound, I had to do something with my creative energy. And I had always loved vitamins and minerals, had always thought about a company. And I'm like, I got nothing else to do. So what am I going to do? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to launch this company, because CBD was one thing that helped with my pain and my functionality. And it's like, if I hadn't been that sick, I would have never sat there for 9 months and built that company, because it was 20 times harder than I realized. And then the other thing was like Zen Pits, my deodorant product. Like I just kind of was like not trying to create things, not trying to force things, not trying to change the world. Last spring, I was just like, I'm really tired of stinking and natural deodorants suck and I'm going to fix this. And then like a year later, it's like this product that's just like taking off and like everybody loves it. And I'm like, I never even set out to create a deodorant. Like, how the hell did this happen? So both of those were validations for me of, if I just make the most of what I have at the time, there's some really great things that can happen. And I think that we get so attached to these ideas and these playbooks of when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen and what we're going to look like when it happens and the timeline and all those things, that we fuck ourselves out of so much goodness, like an opportunity, because we're just like always, nope, it's got to be different. It's got to be different, you know? And I think the one area that I was really good about doing that up until being married was I always really enjoyed my single time. I really valued relationships. I wanted to be married. I wanted the partnership. But when I was single, I also was just like, I love being single. I would focus so much on my business and my own, like, you know, expression and self and exploration. And I loved it. And I would see other people, again, that they wanted to be in a relationship. And if they were single, it was like the end of the world. And I'm like, dude, you're going to look back if you're married 30 years from now and be like, what about that year I had when I was single and I could have done whatever I wanted to do, you know? So I think we may master it in some areas, and then other areas we're like, no. But the more we can just like embrace where we're at and like, this is what I have to work with. How can I embrace it? The universe has so much goodness that it is like waiting to give us if we will just get out of our own freaking way sometimes.
Yes. You said it, sister. And that's just it. Like when I hear you say that story and I look back on myself and I get to see the angel perspective and the dark nights of the soul and like what our souls are doing, like a lot of times when we're pushing and we're getting broken down, there's a reason for it. And there's some magical thing that's going to want to be coming through you. And if during those times we can just embrace them. Right now we're right in the middle of Mercury retrograde and it's a time for us, and fall, and things are falling away. So it's a time for us to breathe and sometimes take a beat and say, okay, maybe there's something more potent coming through. Maybe I'm supposed to be carrying this weight or this vessel or in this position at this time because I am getting ready to give birth to something. Like maybe there is something else that I can't possibly see or look at because I'm only looking through my own funnel right now. And like your story is like really highlights that and shows how there's often great rewards sometimes on the other side of these things that seem like they're not going our way.
Yeah. Yeah. And from me quitting bartending and starting my business to me opening the fitness facility that I did, like all of those really big pivotal changes that like changed everything were in the midst and kind of really facilitated through several really toxic relationships, like bad relationships. Like the guy that I was dating when I was bartending, that we had this little whirlwind romance, fell in love. And he was like, move in with me so you can quit bartending. Like, and it was it was absolutely awful. Like I barely made it through massage school because things were very toxic and volatile. And he even like things got so bad that like he formally evicted me out of our house that like we had bought, it was in his name, but we'd gotten together, picked out everything. We were engaged. And then one day he just decided my business wasn't growing fast enough and that I was just looking for a free ride. That's literally what he told me. And he formally evicted me out of our home. Like I was making like $300. I had just started my business. And when I look back at all of that, like that was a really troubling time. Like it was really bad. I had to give up my dog, who was like my child. I moved from this like 3,000 square foot dream home in this beautiful neighborhood. I never thought I'd live there, to this like 700 square foot apartment. And that was when I like poured everything into my business. But when I look back, like I maybe would have never quit bartending if it hadn't been for him like moving with me, because I was always self-supportive, I may not have ever left him had he not kicked me out, because I had this gorgeous dream home and, I knew all my neighbors and all of that. And the same thing with my gym. Like we originally signed the lease with another partner that we were engaged at the time, thought everything was going to be great. We were going to own this gym together, and we signed the lease together. And literally 2 months later, he had met someone else online, decided that he wanted to be with her, like moved out, took our dogs, left the lease. And I was like, what the hell? Because he had the actual like 9-to-5 job that was going to support us as we built things. Talk about the rug ripped out from underneath you. I mean, again, like I barely made it through that. And then it ended up in all these legal battles and stuff. But it's like all of that pain and all of that suffering, losing my fiance, losing my dogs, suddenly having a business lease that I was not prepared for, all the legal battles. But like, that's how I built, like that was the doorway that I had to walk through to have this facility that was mine. Cause I would have never signed that lease. I couldn't afford it. There's no way I would have ever done that, but I figured it out. Like, it was like the universe dropping me off the cliff and I had to figure out how to fly on the way down. So I think at this point, I've been through enough of those like really adverse situations that you can kind of look back and be like, well, maybe there's a blessing in this. And you have to like look back at those things. You have to look back, and I could tell the story all day long about my psycho exes who were abusive and did all these horrible things. And sometimes I have, but I also recognize the blessings that were in both of those situations and many other examples like that. They're like, those things would have never happened. I may have never went to massage school and quit bartending if it hadn't been for that. And I didn't like the package it came in. It was not my opinion, but it did get me to the other side. And I think just hearing those types of things too, or remembering them if you've personally been through them, is like, okay, a lot of times some really beautiful stuff comes out of this pile of shit that is my life right now. The shit is the fertilizer. We all know how that works. And that's what I had
to make some fertilizer. You had to make some compost
for the soil that we need to be. So I've gotten better about doing that. Again, I fought it for the first 1.5 years of like being sick and everything not looking the way I wanted it to. But the more I've just embraced and been like, there's blessings in this. Somehow I created this company. I did this. I launched this product. It wouldn't have happened any other way. If I was spending 2 hours in the gym every day and doing all these other things, it wouldn't. And there's a bigger plan for me. And I just have to like eventually stop and trust that sometimes. It's hard, but we got to trust it sometimes.
Oh, I just feel you, because same thing. And those are one of those, all those stories you told. I've been through so many similar ones, and so many other women, especially, I know. And it's a lot of times it's part of our ascension paths. It's one of those dark things. It's like one of the dark, I think we go through many dark nights of the soul, but with some of those times where things get ripped away, because there are greater things happening for you. And us being the magical little, generator, maker, manifestors we are, pushing, that sometimes our angels in the universe got to rip things away, because there truly is something better. And that happened to me with my first business. It's happened with relationships, like that experience of being locked out of things, like literally, it's like, what the fuck? Like, I'm kind, and like, what this is, like, this isn't even, I don't understand. This isn't even acceptable. But looking back, I'm like, thank you. Thank you. I said nothing but love and light and peace. And I feel that trauma, and like, I feel good. And even if I haven't fully healed aspects of that trauma, I know I am healing it. I know I was not supposed to continue that. And when you really get deep and down and dirty with it, you see how and when you showed up in certain ways, that there were opportunities that you could have chosen a different path, and then it gets repeated and shows up for you in the future timelines and like in current space. And then you get to use that wisdom is just knowledge without the emotional charge behind it. So you get to use all of these aspects of your life, all of us, in order to move forward. And that's potent and magical and alchemical.
Yeah, I think the final thing that I'll say on that, because you just kind of sparked this thought, and I think it's super relevant, is that when I was talking about kind of stepping out of that masculine energy and trying to be in flow and divine and everything, what I realized is it was part of the masculine energy, right? I did want that charge, that push. But what I had also realized and identified through that is that if I didn't have a life or death emergency, or someone I really needed to prove something to, that I had no motivation. And when I did get married, suddenly I had a security that I had never had before. I was married, my spouse was working, and I didn't have this, like, the world is caving in on me pressure, I have to survive or I'm going to starve kind of mentality. Well, guess what? I don't know how to operate, because my whole life has been trauma, stress. I'm going to prove something to you. I got to survive. And so that was probably the biggest lesson. I don't even know how I failed to mention that part earlier, but when you said what you just said, I was like, oh yeah, duh. That was a huge epiphany for me, was I need to find a way to self-motivate and to show up when it's not a crisis or an emergency, when I'm not falling off the cliff, because that was all I knew how to figure shit out, was when I was under that much pressure before. And when that pressure was gone, I was just like, don't know what to do with myself or my life or what I'm doing, and I just like festered in my own thoughts. So that was a big one for me. And I think that a lot of people who have been through a lot of adversity, I work with a lot of clients in this, where when they have stability or things are not chaotic and traumatic, they will create trauma and chaos because it feels comfortable to them.
It's comfortable.
The only thing that feels good, I've had clients be like,
but we're used to.
We had a kid, my husband lost his job, we bought a new house, and then same day I decided I would, enroll in school or just something. It's just like, it has to be so chaotic. And I work with a lot of people on that, of trying to get comfortable with calm and understand, again, when to tap into that masculine, get shit done energy, but not create so much toxic trauma that it's forcing you to, because that's external, and we want to create internal motivation and movement. And that one has been really big for me. And I'm still, again, just learning and really getting the awareness of putting in new work principles and stuff. Like, I don't take clients before 11 a.m. and that's awesome for me. I don't take clients past 5 p.m. and that's awesome for me. Like, all these different layers of how can I really make the best of my work, but also create all the space I need where I'm not stressing myself to the max and depleting myself in the sake of saving the world. So that is a journey I think a lot of healers are continuously on, is finding that balance for sure.
And that's just it. Adjusting to peace. Learning, we know how to navigate the storms and ride the waves, and we're comfortable with that. We don't know what to do when we're just sailing and there's no wind and we're just floating. And those are the times to work on your devotion, to work on your balance, to be grateful for the peace that's around you. But all of us are constantly, striving and surviving and trying to learn how to bridge that into thriving. And then when we get to the point where we finally did heal that peace, part of us, we're like, oh no. What is this? What do I do?
Yeah. And you know what we do? We go freaking pick fights with people.
It's
Generally,
self-sabotage.
yeah, we're like suddenly looking at our husband or our spouse or our partner, and we're like, you know what would make my life better? If you would stop being you. And like, we just come up with the dumbest shit, or we're fighting with people on Facebook. Like, we're always going to find a way when we're addicted to that. The stress chemicals is what we're truly addicted to in our body and our physiology. That's like our coffee. It's like, we can't get through the day without that surge of adrenaline and crisis emergency mode. And man, we will freaking create it at our own detriment so often. Been a big part of my healing journey. And again, it's so funny how every single thing that I have gone through, it's like the next year, every client that contacts me is going through that same thing. Like, I mean, it is, the universe
never fails
with that. And I'm like, I know how to help you with this, because I just walked this path like just now, and I know exactly what you need. And that has just been a big theme this past year, is like, there's been so many extra things to stress about. So our brains tell us it's warranted, that we have to be informed. There's an election, there's a pandemic, there's all these things. But really, it's just a perfect excuse for our little subconscious brain to grab all the drama we can collect and really stress ourselves out. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. You just don't. So learning that and teaching that is a big thing the past couple of years.
Well, I honor you for doing it. And I thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories and your heart and your energy and your wisdom with us, and continuing to show up for yourself and honor the old versions of you as you welcome in the new versions. And how can our viewers get a hold of you if they want to work with you or get some Zen in a bottle products or any of that good stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me pretty much anywhere at Spiritual Fit Chick. Instagram is the best place because I've got a link that takes you everywhere. And then zeninabottle.biz is, you know, my supplement company of the deodorants there. And I've got all my resources plugged in on my website, spiritualfitchick.com. And yeah, lots of free resources, free programs, blogs, educational stuff. You know, that's my main thing, is whether you're working with me or not, I want you to get some type of value, something that you can plug into your normal life and actually get benefit from. So hopefully if you do connect with me there, you find some of that goodness there. And yeah.
Awesome. And do you have any other pearls of wisdom that you want to leave today, or any other thoughts or anything from your heart?
I think I actually didn't touch on this earlier when you mentioned Mel Robbins, because I loved that book. And that's one of the few books that I will try to listen to once every year, because again, I think we can get so much in that, like, allow, relax, accept, and it's so important, but then we forget that we actually have to make shit happen. Like, we still have to show up. And I love the quote, you have to act your way into feeling. You can't feel your way into acting. And I actually heard that in a church service before I ever read the Mel Robbins book, like years ago. And it stuck with me. It was one of those things that I would make my mantra. I don't feel like sitting down and working on my business today, but I'm going to act my way into that. I don't feel like going for a walk, but I'm going to go do it anyway. And then I'll feel better, you know? And I just love that mantra. It's just, again, one of those things that you can apply to your life. And if you just say it over and over and over again, you will bust through so many barriers and excuses you've made in your mind and really create positive change. So
I think that's a perfect place to end. I love that. Oh, thank you so much, Holly. For our viewers, I'm Mandee from Sea Goddess Healing Arts, and you can find us on seagoddesshealingarts.com, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have all kinds of services and free events and different things coming your way, so stay in touch. And Holly, thank you again so much for taking this time and sharing your heart and your space and your energy with all of us.
Thank you for hosting and leading and everything that you do in this amazing space. And I always love that you have such an open platform to communicate about everything. I think this conversation was a good reflection of just like how it is to kind of talk about things that you're not even that familiar with in your own thing, like the sexual conversation. And I love that you hold that space. That's why this conversation came up, because you are such a safe place for people to fumble or figure stuff out or just voice it. And I just love that you do that in the whole world. So thank you.
Aw, thanks, sister. At the end of the day, we're all just humans, and the only way we learn and grow and gain wisdom and maturity is through experience. So why not rip off the Band-Aids and start talking about the things? Because odds are it's going through everybody else's head too. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and we will be in touch with future episodes of Salt Water for the Soul.